video, we're going to talk about how work is creating depression with lots of people right now. Work essentially is something that should be a specific part of your life. It should not be ruining your life. It should not be overtaking your life. But in this current situation we're in with this high inflation rate, and also other breakdown of the economy in terms of high cost of living, high cost of housing, and even having a family and things like that, it's essentially leading to a lot of people having mental health issues and essentially having like breakdown of their mental health due to the work-related issues. So let's have a look and listen to this woman who's talking about this type of dynamic.
Understand how the news has been dogging Gen Z and calling them lazy for not wanting to work a 9-to-5 for the rest of their lives. Let me put it in perspective for everybody who's a little confused here, okay? I work 5 days out of the week, 40 hours a week, okay? I do not make enough to live on my own.
So we want to take a moment here, right? So if you're working 5 days a week, you're working 40 hours a week, that's a 9-to-5, standard 9-to-5. You should have enough money to live on your own, or enough to kind of save maybe over a couple months or even a year or two to buy your own place to live, right? Typically, you have many people, as I say, who are living alone because they might not be having families and kids and things like that. But the current way the economy is structured, deliberately, through deliberate manipulation and money printing by the central banks, they can't blame it on, you know, a war thousands of miles away like Russia or in the Middle East. This situation is artificially manufactured, deliberate destruction of the middle class through money printing by the central banks, which they call quantitative easing, right? So it puts people who have everyday jobs, I think she might be a nurse actually, who cannot live a dignified life, right? And this is very important because if you have millions of people who can't live a dignified life, you're going to have social instability, you're going to have civil unrest, you're going to have riots and things like that down the road. Of course, I don't condone any type of, you know, improper activity, but isn't it kind of obvious where things are going to end up, right? You know, if you have to, this system doesn't seem to get that in order to have a social stability, you need to have the average person, even if you want to write them down and talk down to them as their average, they need to be able to live a dignified life. If not, you can't. This system thinks it's going to distract you forever with Netflix, with fast food delivery services, with I don't know, whatever the latest drama or political or news issue is, keep you distracted from the fact that you're not living a dignified life and just distracted by your phone, distracted by, like I say, the latest gossip and things like that, where in reality, your quality of life is deteriorating very rapidly, very quickly. And those distractions are not going to, keep you distracted long enough to avoid noticing that. And that's where she's at the point where many other people are at a point where the work issues, the economic issues are creating mental health issues, right? And there's no way of kind of avoiding that at this point with things being this bad. You know, 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, you could say, oh, well, maybe the prices of houses are a bit high, but, you know, another 5 to 10 years of saving and I'll buy a house. And now people can't even afford that house, or they're having to downgrade. They wanted to buy a 3-bedroom house, now they have to opt for a 2-bedroom house. People who wanted to essentially buy a 2-bedroom house might go for a 1-bedroom apartment. People who wanted to have, 5 kids opt for 3 kids or 2 kids or 1 kid or no kids. And then having a relationship might be expensive because there might still be a financial burden of a man to be the provider. And then the woman might think the man's not earning enough given the current state of the economy. So it creates all sorts of perverse incentives, and it really distorts all the social elements that you're seeing right now because of the economy being manipulated by central banks printing money out of thin air.
I would not make enough to pay rent, water, electric, and eat. All by myself. I would not be capable of doing that. 20 years ago when you were getting started, you could live on your own. 20 years ago when you first started, you were able to do everything that I am now struggling to do. Let me add another perspective here. You've been working for 20 years. You have 20 years of working experience behind your belt. You have 20 years of experience in a career that has allowed you to gain raises, to get more money, to profit you in an economy that you created.
And one thing to point out here, this isn't someone who's like a lazy person, right? We can't say, oh, she's unemployed and she's living on government benefits or food stamps in America. She's trying to be a productive person, right? And this system, because it's completely perverted, what it's doing, it's rewarding parasites, maybe people who are ultra rich and don't pay tax through setting up, schemes of their own, within the realm of the law, to avoid paying tax offshore, things like that. And it's also rewarding people who play the victim, who might be, I want a hiring or promotion based on my gender or race, or I have certain kind of undiagnosable health issue and I want government disability benefits and payouts like that. This system is disincentivizing hardworking, honest, productive people. It's disincentivizing productivity and rewarding parasites. So it's like people who are working hard, they're not reaping the benefits. They're like, okay, why don't I play the victim and try to get a government, payout and get some benefits that way? How can I play the victim and have it benefit me? That's the type of narrative this establishment's running with. That's the type of behavior it's encouraging. It's encouraging victimhood versus victory. It's encouraging people to be victims rather than, the victor and the winners in their story. She's got a good point here where she's talking about how, let's listen to her and then I'll comment on it.
You can sit here and you can call Gen Z lazy all you want, but I've been working my tail end off just to barely make it by. And respectfully, I don't want to do that for the rest of my life. I don't want to work my tail end off, wasting all of my life working just to barely be able to pay my bills. And that is what you created, not Gen Z. We're just here getting started. You've been doing it for the last 20 years. You tell me how it got ruined.
So one thing that's important to point out here, she's explaining how the older generations don't get that. She's discussing this in the times of the finances, the wages not being high enough to pay for a decent lifestyle compared to older generations. And it's something I've dealt with and I'm sure you've dealt with, where maybe your parents or people from your parents' generation, I would say people near retirement age, they just don't get it. They're like so detached. They can't even do the basic math in their head. Okay, how much does a house cost? How much does a marriage cost? How much does your standard bills cost? How is this affordable to people who are earning the average income or slightly above average income? It's completely distorted the reality that people are dealing with. And that's why you have to kind of look at other solutions, right? Because you've also got to not engage in really annoying conversations with people who are outside of your particular situation. So if you're a Gen Z and millennial, probably best not to discuss financial situations or your personal finances with the boomer generation, the older generation, because they're the complete disconnect there. They have no idea how difficult it is, even though they could actually see the numbers themselves and be like, okay, this is the person's salary, this is this is the social situation they're dealing with, this is the lack of job instability. They still can't draw the basic conclusions of why people are struggling in this type of situation. And one thing about this person, as I mentioned, it can lead to mental health issues, which I think she might be dealing with, given how frustrated she sounds. The other issue is to consider how people are on edge. And something I'd advise you to consider when you are in public spaces is just bear that in mind, right? When I'm at the grocery store, when I go for walks in the park and I'm around people, anytime you're in a densely populated place on public transport, you can sense the tension, because before you might be on public transport, it might have a depressing vibe, people don't want to go to work, but now there's a tension, like people could snap, people can flip at any moment. And that's why I'd always advise you, just for your own safety, is when I think I can see here she works at Walmart, if I'm reading her name tag correctly. People are on edge. People on the average income in particular, they're on edge. Their lifestyle is getting destroyed, right? Their basic dignity is getting destroyed. So really think carefully, like how you deal with people, have some empathy for people, have a bit more patience for people. Because that's how I feel when I'm in public. Like people could snap at any moment.
We can sit here and we can call Gen Z lazy all you want, but you let the economy turn into what it did. You let it all run to hell. And now it's Gen Z's fault because we don't want to work to fix your mistakes.
So we'll just finish up here. So what is she trying to say? She's kind of putting the blame on the baby boomer generation. And you can say the generation that came before should have been more fiscally responsible. They should have put more pressure on the government through their voting patterns to be more fiscally responsible, not to have a government in $1 trillion of debt in America or billions of dollars of debt in many European and Western countries. They could have been more responsible to saving and investing for their kids, giving their kids buy rental properties, things like that. But ultimately, we have many people in her situation, right? And the point is, everyone's going to be pointing at each other. You have a lot of the younger people pointing at the older people and blaming them. You have people in general pointing at the government and blaming the government. The government might be pointing the finger back and blaming people. I discuss social issues in my videos. You might have men and women, or blaming each other and pointing the finger at each other, the left wing and the right wing, people who maybe eat meat versus the climate change activists. You have this very divisive, two-sided society where one side's blaming the other and things like that, right? And the truth is, we need a solution, and she needs a solution. And this is what I try to provide for my clients, right? We're not living in a perfect society. There's lots of dysfunction going on. I myself have worked at some of these big banks like Goldman Sachs, HSBC, and Morgan Stanley. I studied economics, and I can see the reality for what it is. And it's something I've been talking about for over a decade. And one thing you realize about the finance industry is that, firstly, people are very dishonest. And the other thing is they're not going to talk about the reality that I mentioned a few times in this video about central banks printing money out of thin air, deliberately creating inflation under the guise of propping up the stock market through quantitative easing, and making your life difficult, and then pretending, oh, I don't know why that's happening. Oh, it's Russia's fault because there's a war in the Ukraine. That's nothing to do with the ridiculous living costs that you're dealing with right now. So what I try to do is offer unique solutions to people based on their skill set, based on their current lifestyle position, right? There's three things I have. They're all the links in the description. First thing is I offer a free ebook so you can learn from 10 career lessons that I put together. The second is a free discovery call. We can talk for 15 minutes or so. I can help you with your career finance goals or any other type of goals around those topics that I can help with. And the third thing is I offer a formal coaching program where I'll help you coach you through, these difficult financial scenarios, career scenarios. So ultimately you can find career fulfillment with knowing a next step of your career trajectory, building time freedom through remote work and hybrid work, maybe flexible working, options like that, part-time contract work, things like that. And then also help you be rich forever through managing your budget, savings, and investments. We can help you find a long-term solution for that long-term financial stability in quite unstable times. And ultimately, that's to help you live a life you can actually love, right? Whether that's, in our case, it could be, living in a lower cost location or lower cost country, and being able to work online, work remotely, and have a bit more of a calm, relaxed life by herself rather than the crazy economic, social situation that's going on in the West. So I hope you found that helpful. There are 2 recommended videos on your screen right now, and I'll see you next time.